So tonight, Mir Hashem, we are going to be discussing stress management. My wife asked me earlier today if I'm stressed about the class about stress management. I said, no, not really. I just have to sit down and do it, prepare it, work on it. And once I do that, Mir Hashem, it'll be good, it'll be fine. So Baruch Hashem, thank God I had time today in my schedule to think about it, to research it, to do a lot of reading and writing, and I'd like to share the fruits of my labor with you tonight. Raise your hand. We'll go with the gallery view here. I don't know how much you can see, but raise your hand if you think you're normal. I mean, no one really thinks they're normal, right? My joke was that if I think I'm normal, that means I think everybody else is not normal, right? I think I said that when I was in high school. If I think I'm normal, that means everybody else is not normal. Why? Why do I mean? So I heard today from a psychiatrist. We'll talk about some of his words later. One of the things that he mentioned is a firm guy who's High Lifeline sponsored his talk today. He said, the only normal I know is a cycle on the washing machine. That's the only normal that I know. We all struggle with feelings, with thoughts. And the idea of being normal or not being normal, it's just whatever. What's the difference? And there's certainly nothing normal about these times that we find ourselves in right now. So I want to begin with a story of two people, and I want you to think critically about these stories, these vignettes. The vignettes are totally fabricated. You tell me whether or not these people are normal or abnormal, okay? And the difference between normal and abnormal is going to be critical. These stories are totally fake, but I'm sure they're happening all over the place. Chani is a married mother of three. During the normal scheme of things, she is a medical secretary, sends her kids off to school, works from home or goes into the office. But during Corona now, she's frazzled. And each day she wakes up and she has to nudge herself out of bed after a fitful night of sleeping. She gives her kids some facsimile of breakfast, and she pushes aside her anxiety. She's trying to juggle everything. She helps her two older kids with their Zoom classrooms, simultaneously handling a rambunctious 2-year-old. She tries to do some of her work responsibly. And at the end of the day, she finds herself, as you might imagine, exhausted and drained. Once the kids are in bed, as my wife says lately, she goes, this day has to end. The kids have to be in bed asleep. The daytime has to end, the nighttime has to start. So she finds herself drained and exhausted, but once the kids are in bed, she spends a few minutes schmoozing with her husband, calling a friend or two. That's Chani. Our second vignette is about Shmuley. Shmuley's in his mid-40s, and in the context of COVID-19, he's trying to manage his accountant business from home, and at the same time, help his wife manage the kids. However, he reports that during the last few weeks, he's exhausted all the time. He doesn't sleep well at night. He only gets out of bed at around noon because his wife physically nudges him and with significant urging, and then finally he gets out of bed. He can't focus on his davening. He can't focus on his learning with his chavrusa. He can't focus on his work tasks. The little work he does do, he very self-critically doubts how well he has done it. He's snappy and irritable with his wife, and he has disconnected himself from his usual playful behavior with his children. Okay, these are the two vignettes. Think about them critically. You can use the chat to tell me what you think. If you were a case manager, or you are doing the intake for if you're a case manager or doing the intake for an agency, which one of the two cases would be more alarming to you? Is one way to put it. Okay. Which one of the two cases would be more alarming? That's a good question. And additionally, which one of these two cases do you think might need psychiatric help? Which one of the two cases is totally normal? And you're welcome to use the chat to tell me what you think. So some of you are saying that the woman is normal but a bit stressed, and the man's case is more serious. Everyone else seems to be in agreement. The second case is more alarming. First one seems to be more normal. Some of you say, no, even the second guy is normal. He just needs guidance on how to manage. Okay? We'll start off with these two cases. Why these two cases? Because these two cases are just classic vignettes of people that have a lot of stress in their life because of the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And as a result, we need to figure this out. Okay, some of you think they're both normal, but the second case needs more guidance. Okay, very good. All right. Introduction number 2. The Musar Svarim, Sifrei Musar, say that the purpose of life is la'amod b'nisyonot, to withstand living with trials and tribulations. The trials and tribulations of life. Our joke in our family is if we read one more article about fill in the blank in these difficult times or in these, times of trial and tribulation, we're going to toss out the magazine before we read it, right? But that's what the Musar Svarim say. The purpose of life is la'amod b'nisyonot. That is that your life has challenge. And we are challenged. We definitely have challenges. We have nisyonot. Although you should know that there is a tefillah, there's a prayer, in which we daven and we say to Hashem, please don't bring me to lidei nisayon. Pardon me for a second, this person is trying to get in. Okay. And so you certainly can daven to ask Hashem to minimize nisyonot, there's no question about it. But the reality is that our life is challenging, and that's the purpose of life. And there's going to be good times in our life, there's going to be difficult times in our life. The Medrash Tehillim says, how should you look at tough times in your life? Ilo nafalti lo kamti. Ilo yashavti b'choshech lo haya orli. If I did not fall, I never would have gotten back up. And if I did not fall, I never would have gotten back up. And if I had not sat in the darkness, then it would not be light for me. What does that mean? Thank you. Somebody just asked me for a recording. We are recording this class. At least my computer tells me that we're recording. Hopefully we are. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your concern. But B'ezrat Hashem, we are recording actually. Okay, so what does the Medrash mean? That had I not fallen, I never would have gotten back up. Had I not sat in the darkness, I never would have been in the light. The Medrash is telling us something very, very important, and that is that the darkness in our life informs us of the darkness in our life informs the good times. Meaning, it's not, sometimes when my sister, she used to say life is like a heartbeat, that your life goes up and your life goes down. Your life goes up and your life goes down. A deadbeat is someone who has no life. When life is unchanging. This idea is a little bit deeper. It's that the valleys in between the peaks inform the peaks. What does that mean? So listen to this beautiful idea that I heard from Dr. David Pelkowitz in the name of Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz was the mashgiach in pre-war Europe, in the Mir, I believe. Okay, and he says like this: that the Gemara, the Torah, describes God's footstool. Whatever that means, it's a Kabbalistic idea. And it says, "Kima'aseh livnat hasapir." It was made like a sapphire brick. It's made like a sapphire brick. And embedded in this, what does that mean? Is it a sapphire or is it a brick? Is it a brick of sapphire? So the Medrash says, or the Chazal say, that there was a sapphire, and embedded in the sapphire was a brick. And where was that brick from? That brick was from Mitzrayim. It was from Egypt. It was a reminder to God of our slavery, of our suffering. So Rabbi Yerucham at Levovitz asks, "My inyan hashibud, la'achar hashibud." Why does God need to have a reminder of Mitzrayim, of the Exodus, of not the Exodus, of Galus Mitzrayim, of the exile in Egypt? Why does God need to have a reminder of that? Egypt was a long time ago. We were freed a long time ago. Why do we have to remember it? So even when times are good, he says, we have to embed in our lives the lessons of the bad together with the lessons of the good. The lessons of the dark together with the lessons of the light. Should I tell my children that I once had a sister who passed away? Should I tell my child who's totally healthy now that when they were younger they had cancer? That's not true, by the way. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Should I be informing people about things that happened in the past? Should I be doing that? Rav Levavitch says that life has an ebb and a flow. There's good times and there's tough times. When the sapphire and the light come into our lives, so we have to integrate into it the lessons of our lives. And therefore, when our children are old enough, it has to be developmentally appropriate. We tell them, remember about the dark, remember the darkness, remember the time that I felt, and let's learn from it. Going back to the new normal, Be'ezrat Hashem, we all hope to go back to the new normal, not to the old normal, right? Not the way things were. We hope to go back to it soon. We tend to forget the lessons of the past. I'm using this idea as an introduction because we have to understand that our mindset, the Baal Shem Tov says that where our mind is, that's where we are. Our mindset is so important. How we think about the situation. So whether you're like Chani or whether you're like Shmuley, how you think about a situation is critical to how you're going to get through it. I went on a hike Sunday morning with a friend of mine. Don't worry, I stayed 6 feet apart from him. Okay, and we went to Eaton Canyon Falls. Beautiful, it was so beautiful in Pasadena. And he said to me, he says, I'm thinking about what am I going to regret when things go back to normal? In other words, imagine for a second that tomorrow morning, the conspiracy theorists are proven right, and the government announces, the federal and the state governments announce, there's no need for social distancing, and we're ready to move on with our lives. How would you feel? Relieved? Excited? Ask yourself this question. Will you feel like, oh, I should have done blank. I wish I had taken the time that I had to do X, Y, and Z. If that's how you feel, if that's how you're going to feel, well then, it's like the story of the fellow who died, and then he was reincarnated as a fly, and he went to his own funeral. You know that story? And he listened to the eulogies, and he said, I was hoping they would say 3 things about me. I was hoping they would say I was a kind person, that I was a generous person, and that I was committed to my family. Let's say those 3 values, okay? And imagine yourself in that fly's shoes, okay? Remember the centipede with all the shoes? Imagine yourself, right, in that fly's shoes. And you tell yourself, what if I got to go to my own funeral? What are they going to say about me? What do I want them to say about me? Okay, so now live your life backwards and make sure that you live your life in such a way that after 120, those are the things that they're going to say about you. I have to tell you, every now and then Chaber Kadisha calls me to do a levaya, to do a funeral for them, and I spend time with the families, usually by phone. I spend time with the families, and there are sometimes it's like pulling hair. It's like pulling hair. It's like, tell me something nice about your grandfather. Tell me what values you learned from your mother. What was important to them? People have no idea sometimes. So whatever it is that you do value, make sure you share that with your families. And live your life in such a way that it's obvious that it's really important to you to be a generous person, a kind person, and the family is important to you. It shouldn't be a value that you preach about that you don't actually live, obviously. But this is the question that he asked me. My chavru said, my friend, he said to me, what would happen if this whole thing were to end tomorrow? What would you say? Oh, I should have, I could have, I would have, but I didn't. And make sure that doesn't happen. So when you think about for a moment here, okay, stress, we're talking about stress management. I know it's not obvious yet, but we're talking about the challenge, the difficulty in which we find ourselves. Make this moment meaningful. That's, I think, message number 1. Another, I have another couple of mechanisms I will just talk about very, very briefly. Tools we'll talk about very, very briefly. There's a study. This study comes out of the field of positive psychology. And the study is about the power of connection. We took people to the bottom of a steep hill, and they asked them to estimate the angle, the steepness of the mountain, the steepness of the hill. And according to the study, the hill looks less steep if someone is with you. How awesome is that? If somebody is with you, the hill looks less steep. And the closer that person is to you, the hill looks even less steep than it otherwise did. There's another study in which there is again from positive psychology, in which they determined the best predictor for resilience. The best predictor for resilience is what? And they narrowed it down to one question. Do you have one person in your life who you can wake up at 3 a.m. to talk to? Ask yourself that question. So last night I woke up my wife at 3 o'clock in the morning and I said, can I ask you something? Can I talk to you about something? And she said, of course, sure. I said, okay, that's good enough. Now go back to sleep. Okay, so, but it's the same idea. That power of connection is something that enables us to manage challenge, to manage difficulty, including stress. So that's one quick tool. The second tool is one that we're going to spend most of the night on. And that's the idea of staying in the moment. That's the idea of staying in the moment. The Rambam, I found this online today. The Rambam, as you may know, was a physician, a respected physician. He was the physician for the Sultan, or I don't know, the Islamic leader of Cairo, of Egypt. And in addition to obviously being the world-class Talmid Chacham, the great Torah sage that he also was one of the most important physicians, probably of 300-400 years of his era. And he wrote textbooks that people studied for generations. So he has an article or a book called Regimen of Health. I assume that's a translation. And there's a beautiful piece in there regarding emotional health, where he suggests to Saladin's son how to perceive life's challenges. And I'll quote, "The physician should not think that medical knowledge alone can set aside emotional instabilities. Psychology and ethical philosophy are necessary. Contemplation alone reduces bad thoughts, anxiety, and distress. Most thoughts that cause distress, sorrow, sadness, or grief occurs from one of two things. Number one, either one thinks of the past, like the loss of money or of a beloved one, or number two, one thinks of something that may occur in the future, like a possible loss or injury, and one fears their coming. Yet it is known through rational observation that thinking about the past is of no benefit at all. Sorrow and grief over the past are activities of those who lack the influence of the intellect." This is his language. "There is no difference between a person who grieves over lost money and the like, and someone who grieves because he is human and not an angel or a star or similar thoughts which are impossibilities." So that's where he's speaking about the past. Similarly, any anxiety that results from thoughts about what may happen in the future are pointless, because every possible thing lies in the realm of possibility. Maybe it will happen, and maybe it won't. He says, let a person replace anxiety with hope in God, bitachon. And with this hope, it's possible that, in fact, the opposite of what one fears will actually happen, because both what one fears and its opposite are equally in the realm of possibility. In other words, don't get caught up and lost in the anxiety of, in the overwhelming feelings that come together with those sorts of thoughts, because there's no point in it. Now, obviously, he's not speaking about people that are clinically depressed or clinical generalized anxiety disorder. Not speaking about that. He's speaking about people more like, he's speaking about more people who are just, run-of-the-mill, more like Chani than like Shmuley, I would say. Okay? From the opening two vignettes. One tool, by the way, that's very important to utilize and that can help a person stay in the present is breathing. If you want, and you want to stay on after the shiur afterwards, I'm happy to lead you all in an exercise of breathing, and I'll teach you how to breathe. Oh, you think you know how to breathe? Everyone knows how to breathe, all right? The answer is most of us don't know how to breathe unless we actually, if you practice yoga, it's possible you know how to breathe. If you practice mindfulness, you probably know how to breathe. For anyone who doesn't do those things and you want to learn a simple way to breathe and how to, the most simple way of practicing mindfulness, then I'm happy to share that with you afterwards. I'm very, very happy to share that with you afterwards. Okay. There's a wonderful book. I read this book years ago. It's called The Present. Anyone here ever read the book called The Present? The Present is a book written by Spencer Johnson. He wrote a more famous book called Who Moved My Cheese? They are business books. They're parables for people in the business world. And The Present is a book that I have found to be very helpful in my own life, and I'll share it with you. What is The Present? It's an engaging story of a young man's journey to adulthood and his tireless search for the present. By the way, the cover of the book is a gift wrapped present, gift. What is the present? A mysterious and elusive gift he first hears about from a wise old man. This present, according to the old man, is the most valuable gift a person can receive. Why? Because it's the one thing that doesn't change in changing times. And as the young boy becomes a man, he grows disillusioned with his work and his life. So he returns to ask the old man to help him find the present. And the old man responds, only you have the power to find the present for yourself. So heeding the old man's advice, the young man embarks on a worldwide search for this magical gift that remains unchanging in a changed world and holds the secret to personal happiness and lifelong success. And it's only after the young man has searched high and low and all but given up his relentless pursuit that he discovers the present and all the promises it offers. He finally realizes that the present is not a physical gift, but a concept involved, being totally involved in whatever you are currently doing. In other words, living in the present. The greatest gift you can give yourself is not living in the past, not worrying about the future, but living in the moment right now. A lot of stress that people experience, I think, a lot of stress that people experience is extraordinarily stressful to them, because not only because of the moment of the stress, but it's because they have other things that they have to do. So being able to focus on the present and living in the present, I think, is a tremendous tool. I want to talk about living in the present on a deeper level. Have you ever heard the expression, I think it's a relatively modern expression, to own something? Not to own up to something, but to own it. Own it. You know, I could tell you that right now I'm tired. Last night I gave 2 shiurim. The baby was up till who knows when. Yada, 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 yada. Okay, or so those are kind of excuses, right? I can say, no, I've got a responsibility, a privilege. Really, I love doing this, and I'm not at all looking for an excuse. I'm so happy to be here and doing this with you tonight. And I'm owning it. What does it mean to own it? It means it's mine, and I'm going to live it. And so owning your experience is living in the present on a deeper level. There's a social psychologist. Her last name, for those of you who are Harry Potter fans, you'll enjoy this. Her last name is McGonagall. I kid you not. Okay, and she's a therapist, not a therapist. She's a social psychologist at Stanford University in Palo Alto, and she specializes in stress management. She has a wonderful TED Talk. I can send it to you later if you'd like to see it, or you can just Google McGonagall TED Talk stress. And what I'm sharing with you tonight is from an interview, as well as a book summary of her book, which actually did not bother writing down what it's called, but I can look it up for you afterwards, okay? So she became interested in stress, how? Because she says when you're a health psychologist, did I say social psychologist? I meant health. She's a health psychologist. So she says that when you're a health psychologist, you're taught that stress is the #1 problem that human beings experience, and it's blamed for everything. Many of you here tonight are older than I am. You probably can remember, just following headlines of Time magazine over the last 40 years, where, you see how things evolve, how things have evolved from where stress is a terrible thing and it causes heart attacks to where maybe things have evolved a little bit since then. And let's see what she says. She says that when I started leading stress management classes, at Stanford School of Medicine, I based them on the prevailing belief that a large part of reducing people's suffering necessarily involved teaching them to reduce or avoid stress. And I think you'll find that many people think this way, that in order for me to reduce my suffering, So I have to learn to reduce or to avoid my stress. But then she says she began to rethink it. And I'll quote, the more I learned about working with chronic pain, compassion, and willpower, the clearer it became that people's desire to avoid what they're actually experiencing consistently makes things worse. I'll read that one more time. The clearer it became that people's desire to avoid what they're actually experiencing consistently makes things worse. So if you're someone who's dealing with chronic pain, and everything in your life is designed to help you avoid or reduce the experience of pain, that's the best predictor of the fact that your pain will get worse. Your life will get smaller, and you'll end up even more depressed. And then she says, for every form of suffering that I studied, it was clear that the more people tried to avoid an inner experience, they thought they couldn't handle, the worse things got. Regardless of how much we'd like a life that's less stressful, or how much we don't like how stress feels in our bodies, the more we try to avoid those feelings or the situations that trigger them, the more we create a life that's limited and experience a sense of self that's fearful. And then she says, again, she spent many years working with people with chronic pain. I remember, unfortunately, a friend of mine's sister, she had a surgery to remove a bunion on her foot. And the doctor nicked a nerve. And it turned her life upside down for years. She had chronic pain. She probably still does. And it wasn't until she went to some facility, some hospital setting or like rehab kind of setting in Chicago, that she actually learned to live with the pain. And that's the only thing that helped her. So McGonigal says, I find that the more you're willing to feel what you're feeling, the more you're actually able to have a different experience of that pain. So I've spent years trying to figure out how to help people understand that this is true, even though they're told you shouldn't feel this. And if you do, you should do something to get rid of it. How many of us run to the medicine cabinet when we have a headache, a stomach ache, instead of living with it and just trying to absorb it? Remember we talked about how Levavitch says that in order to be successful at life and to be omid v'nisayon, to withstand your challenges in life, you have to be able to incorporate the challenges, the bad times, the dark times, the slavery together with the freedom. Says McGonigal, experiencing stress can be helpful. In other words, stress has a bad name, but it doesn't have to, she says. Experiencing stress can be helpful. So stress management, manage it by experiencing it. And researchers have now become better at identifying the many ways human beings have for responding positively to stress. So whether it's post-traumatic growth or what she calls a challenge response. What's a challenge response? A challenge response is when we're in a situation where something we care about is at stake and we feel like, okay, I can handle this. I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I trust myself to try. And on a medical level, that response is filled with benefits for our cardiovascular system, our immune system, and our brain resilience. And finally, she says, it's really important for people to understand that regular experiences of stress are the way we empower ourselves and create resilience. So the person who is interviewing her asked the following question, and it's one that I could relate to a lot. He says, as I was late driving to the airport last week, I wondered how I could use my stress as a challenge, an opportunity for growth. Okay. I don't have a lot of anxiety in my life, thank God, Baruch Hashem. I do have anxiety at times, but thank God, Baruch Hashem, I'm okay. But no matter how early I leave to the airport, I get travel anxiety. I think probably some of you can relate to that. And look, there are times when I got there last minute, and maybe that's why. So this is the question that he was asking. And she says like this. When I'm in that situation, I often allow myself to recognize that my stress response is a signal that I care. So here's a person who lives in the present, and she's owning it, and she's saying to herself, what do I need to do to manage this? And she says, I often allow myself to recognize that my stress response is a signal that I care. Resetting my stress mindset in this way works in almost every situation because it gives you an opportunity to think about what you really care about. And as soon as you think about the positive things that you care about, like going to an interesting work opportunity, why your work matters to you, why your family matters to you. Imagine things are stressful in the house, okay? This is not such a shocking thing, right? Imagine things are stressful in your house. Imagine things that are stressful in your house. Can you imagine such a thing? We can all imagine that, right? And you tell yourself, I love my family. My family is the most important thing in the world to me. Making sure that my children have dinner tonight and are clean and go to bed and they're feel loved and cared for, most important thing. I've just transformed a stressful situation to one that is an opportunity, to one that's a privilege. And I've transformed my physiology and my attitude. And she says it doesn't necessarily have to go further than that. And then finally she says, people wonder how they're supposed to transform things like road rage. She says, sometimes the stress response comes because we feel like there's more at stake than there really is. So if you reflect on, is it really important that I be there in front of that guy, that I make this light, that I don't know, get in the coma, that I take revenge on the person who cut me off? Are these things really that important? Of course not. And taking that moment to reflect, we can actually reset ourselves, and so we don't have to feel that stress. In her book, I don't know if any of you looked it up and chatted it to me. Oh, thank you very much, Myrna. In her book, by Kelly McGonigal, and How to Make Stress Your Friend. That's the name of the book. Okay. So I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the best ways to read books nowadays when you don't have time to read full books is you go online, you type in book summary and then the title of the book. Okay, so this person, I can't vouch for the person who wrote it, but basically there are 3 lessons that he gets from her book. Number 1, stress is only harmful to your health if you believe it is. How do you manage stress? Start believing that it's good for you. Okay? Number 2, and by the way, she has tons of data and studies to back this up. Number 2, there's something called the stress paradox, which says that happiness and stress belong together. So here it is in a nutshell. Stress is always part of a happy life, which means a totally stress-free life cannot be a happy one. The Gallup poll found around 40% of Americans struggle with stress daily. Other countries in Africa have a much lower daily stress level. The summary quotes somebody at 5%, meaning a certain country that have 5% stress levels. And yet we have higher income, longer life expectancy, higher standards of living, and some of those African countries suffer from crime, violence, hunger, corruption, and civil wars. Would you rather live with more stress? I think I would. Listen to this incredible study. This is a study done by Roy Baumeister, a pioneer of willpower research. In 2013, he did a study which showed that we often believe that the most stressful events in our lives to also be the most meaningful. The most successful people are often crazy busy and very hard to reach because they love their career and they give it their all. And a big part of the meaningfulness of their work is derived from the fact that it's stressful. Similarly, having a baby is often quoted as the best thing that ever happened, but no one would say that it's a cakewalk. So by remembering that happiness and stress go together, like yin and yang, you can already improve your attitude towards both of them. I probably have shared this with you in the past, but the word mashber in modern Hebrew means a crisis. And the word mashber in more archaic Hebrew means a birth stool, which is what women used to crouch on when giving birth. What's the result of the mashber? Life. What's the result that comes out of crisis? It's life. That's the result that comes out of crisis. Crisis and stress are good things. And if you think about it like that, it makes it easier to manage it. That's what we mean by owning it. And then, of course, and here's one that I could relate to a lot. One of the things that I don't want to say that I'm famous for, but when anyone hears my name, they say, oh, did you do that? And I say yes, which is that I actually fulfilled a lifelong dream of mine, which is that I sang the national anthem at Dodger Stadium. I've always wanted to do that since I was a child. I can't tell you why I wanted to do that. My family has gotten used to me singing the national anthem in the shower. Not my wife and my children, but growing up, that was, you can't sing psukim in the shower, so you can't sing Torah in the shower. It's, davening. So what are you going to sing? I didn't listen to secular music then, or now. So what am I going to sing in the shower? So I sang the national anthem. I'm telling you, my entire life I looked forward to it, and I Baruch Hashem. I want to say Baruch Hashem. Okay, thank you to Hashem that He made it work for me. I made a CD. I did an audition. They accepted it. They welcomed me, and it was an interesting experience. One of the more interesting aspects of that experience was the fact that I was a little bit nervous. You can imagine. right? How many people are there at the beginning of the game? 15, 20,000. Okay, it was Sunday night. It was nationally televised, although my anthem was not nationally televised, which was annoying. Okay. Anyway, so you can imagine I was a little bit nervous. Is that a good thing for a performance or a bad thing for performance? Okay. Obviously, so much nervousness that you freeze and you have stage fright is not good for performance. But you can channel stress into energy, which boosts performance. What do you think is the better thing to tell yourself before a presentation? I am calm or I am excited? There's a Harvard professor, her name is Alison Brooks. She told 2 groups of her students to try these. And afterwards, she asked the crowd who performed better. The group who tried to get excited was perceived as more confident, competent, and graceful. That's because they didn't just try to calm down their anxiety, but instead they channeled their stress into energy to make the presentation fun. So the next time you're stressed out, change that negative self-talk into something that's not calming, but rather something encouraging, and use the energy to make something good happen. This is a great tool. This is called owning the stress, owning the moment. That present tense is really what it's all about. And even though being in that present tense is not necessarily so wonderful, but if I can be present, I can be powerful. I can toss aside the dominance of my doubts and desires. My body and my mind can focus on the task immediately in front of me. I can engage in the present, not push it away. If you're in a conflict and you're in a stressful moment, tell yourself, I'm okay with this experience. That places you with the problem in the present instead of being overwhelmed by it. I want to end with some beautiful words of Torah that I heard from Dr. Pelkowitz. Beautiful words of Torah. The Baal Shem Tov says, "B'makom shemachshavto shel ish, sham nimtza ha'ish." Wherever the person's mind is, that's where he is. That's where she is. And that's what we've been talking about all along. This all fits into cognitive therapy. There's no question about it. You know, you talk about a difficult situation. I told you before, what are you going to regret? Okay? I know for myself, something I would be afraid to regret is, did I take advantage of the situation? I have an nisayon. Now, I want to share something very powerful. The Baba Rebbe says that, what are we saying, Baruch Shamar? Hashem is gozer u'mekayim. Hashem makes life difficult for us, so he's mekayim, but he gives us the strength we need to sustain us through those difficulties. But in those difficulties, in that mindset, imagine yourself at Akedat Yitzchak. Okay? Akedat Yitzchak, one of the most dramatic moments in all of Tanakh and Jewish history. And just the Malach calls out, Hashem really calls out to Avram, and he says, Atas lo me'uma, don't touch the lad, don't touch the youth, don't cut him, don't shecht him. Avram Avinu looks around and he sees the ram, and the ram is stuck in the thicket. Is the ram stuck? Are we stuck in our situation? Do we feel like a log on a river floating at the mercy of the current? Are we stuck, or is the ram positioned? Are we positioned for destiny? If we view our life challenges and our difficulties, and we are, I imagine anybody who signed on tonight, it relates to stress, and that's why you joined tonight. You view your situation as one of destiny. We grow from destiny. We find meaning with the tough times in our lives. There are many, many, many studies, dozens of studies, that say the same thing the Gemara says. Something bad happens, find meaning in it. We have to take an active role. Rav Matisyahu Solomon spoke to a group of people who were very active in helping the survivors on 9/11. This was on September 12th, okay, that Wednesday. And he says, Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are compared to an eagle hovering over its young. And the eagle hovers over its nest. And the baby eagle has to hop on its mother's back, because the baby eagle has to take an active role. Hashem is the eagle kaviyachal, but we have to take the active role. We need to own our experience. And when we do, life is much less stressful. I want to finish, and then we'll talk about, so if you're interested in doing the mindfulness exercise. But there's an incredible mashal from the Dibn Magid. But how to view your tough times in life. There was a king who needed a therapist, okay? The king had a problem. He was very insecure. And in order to calm his insecurities, he went out and he invested in the most expensive diamond in the world. It was much bigger than the Hope diamond. And what did he do? He put it into his crown. And every morning he would look at his crown. He would say, I have the most important, most beautiful diamond in the world. I am important. And then one morning he woke up and he saw a flaw. He saw a crack in the diamond. And he was devastated. And he promised riches beyond imagination to any jeweler, to anybody who can come and fix it. And jewelers came from all over the world, and they tried their best. But a crack in a diamond is a crack in the diamond. You can't do anything about it. There's one little old Jew. He takes a diamond, and he pulls out his diamond cutter, and he starts to cut on it. And they asked him, what are you doing? You're meshugana, you're making it worse. He said, have patience. And what did he do? He engraved magnificent leaves around the flaw. So now the flaw, instead of being a flaw, was a tree with branches, with beautiful leaves. And now the flaw was no flaw. And the diamond was more beautiful than ever. Because the new normal is beautiful. And so he changed the flaw into something magnificent and beautiful. When you learn to manage your stress, I know you're coming on tonight, Rabbi Stewart's going to say you should exercise. Yeah, you should exercise. Rabbi Stewart's going to say you should do breathing exercises. Yes, you should do breathing exercises. Rabbi Stewart's going to say you should get enough sleep. Yes, you should get enough sleep. Yes. Those things you can find on the internet. You don't need me for that. I don't know if you need me for this either, but you certainly don't need me for that. Okay, I did a Google search. Judaism and stress. What I found was very disappointing. I found articles on famous websites. Very disappointing. What we're talking about tonight is something so much more powerful. We're talking about not escaping the stress, but owning the stress, living in that present moment, changing your mindset about stress. And when you do those things, I think, when you live in that present that young man looked for and finally found, when you learn to change your mindset, like the Rambam says, and not worry about the past or the future, but live in that moment. Of course, you should hopefully have someone to have good company with. Have somebody that you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning and wake them up and talk to them. Have someone like that. Have that social connection. Of course, you should have that social connection. But the idea that we're going for tonight is when we started with it, which is you need to build into the challenge and understand that it's not something that you're trying to get away from. It's something that becomes part of your future. And that's why that stone that represents Hashem's footstool is a sapphire with a brick that represents the slavery in Egypt, and not just the freedom, but the slavery as well, because it's part of the freedom. Because that makes us great, and that makes us great people. And those are the ideas I wanted to share with you tonight, and some chidushim and some thoughts about stress management. For those of you that are curious to hear more about Chani and Shmuley, Shmuley has a number of issues that are warranted for a psychiatric evaluation. I'm not saying he needs to be committed, God forbid. I'm not saying he needs medication. He needs an evaluation to see what he needs, because there are certainly red flags when it comes to stress. Some of the red flags include, and I'm sure with you if you're interested, where your thoughts are so persistent, so overwhelming that you can't think about other things. You're overly agitated, you're threatening or physical. Where you're drinking too much, where grief becomes overwhelming, or the guilt or the incessant crying, you're so preoccupied with the news that you can't do anything else about it. Yeah, that's when psychiatric evaluation is called for. But otherwise, if it's just life circumstances, so you can learn to grow from it with the help of a good friend and with the help of a good, strong community, and hopefully with tonight's shir, I hope so. If you came late and you want to listen to the rest of it, just send me a text and I will give you, if Hashem, this did record properly, and I will give you I'll send you the recording. If anyone is interested in a mindfulness exercise, I'm happy to stay on. In the meantime, I will unmute you. We'll take a moment. I'll unmute everybody. You are welcome to ask me any questions you may have. If you want to mute yourself, you're welcome to do that as well. Let's take a moment before I begin the exercise. Thank you. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, you're also welcome to chat them. Feel free. Okay, so if you're staying on, it's because you are electing to join us in a mindfulness exercise, okay? If you're not interested in it, no problem, okay? I'm not insulted. I didn't create it. There's a lot of value in mindfulness. Arya Kaplan writes about it extensively. Myrna, did you have a question?
I have a little confusion between, yes. I have a little confusion between difficult circumstances and stress. Like if someone is working very hard and is, very busy and stuff like that, and I'm not personifying, I'm just thinking, okay?
Yeah.
They can perceive that as stress, or they can just be moving along at a certain pace, not consider that stress. When you spoke previously, you said that is a stressful situation. I don't know if I'm expressing it correctly.
I think you know better than I, but there's probably a scientific objective definition, having to do with the release of certain hormones and things of that nature. And it's stress. How you think about it is what we talked about tonight. The language that you use is critical. So you have found a way in terms of what the person that you're describing, I don't think about stressful. I just think of it as busy. And if that's helpful, then that's great. Does that make sense?
What you're saying is that in a situation like that, there are similar hormones and
Absolutely.
heart rate and everything else that are
yeah, 100%.
are expressed. Yeah.
What?
I think that for myself, like even in terms of like my own, let's take for example writing the speech. I had 2 shiurim last night, and I wasn't going to get to it till today. I taught my classes today, Baruch Hashem. We have family today. I worked out today. I didn't take a nap today. I didn't run today, but I worked out today, which was very helpful for me. But like sitting down to write and researching and reading and listening and watching and doing all the things that I do in order to put this all together, that's stressful. But it's not bad. It's not bad stress. It's busy, but it's not bad busyness. For me, it forces creativity. And so I'm able to produce a lot. For me, when I have those hormones being released, I actually can produce a lot quicker. I have a lot of typos in my notes, but that's fine, as long as I can read them, okay? But I can produce much more material, much, much quicker and deeper even at times when I feel like that.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, let's do a simple mindfulness exercise. I do this with a lot of clients. I find it extremely helpful. By the way, today, so one thing I know how to do is, I don't want to say multitask, but I do, because I don't believe multitasking. But what I do is I do 2 things at once. So this afternoon, my wife is teaching, and I had the 2 boys in the backyard. And Baruch Hashem, they were happy. So I did a half an hour of yoga, of stretching. And so that's, for me also, that's very, very, that can be super helpful as well. Just in terms of managing my own stress level, so that when I sit down, then I could be more productive, because I'm not, it's because I'm balancing, so that maybe that's why I'm more productive, perhaps. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody again. And if you want to unmute yourself. Did you have a question, Joel? Okay. So you can unmute yourself just by pressing on the space bar. If you have a question, you're welcome to let me know. I'm going to do this little mindfulness exercise with you, and it's one that I learned many years ago in college. I find that doing it, the reason why I brought up the yoga, I find that by doing it, if you do it for 10 minutes, it's better than taking a half an hour nap. Okay, there's data on that, but it's very, 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 very powerful. So basically, it's like this. I joked around. I said, you don't know how to breathe. You know how to breathe? So what I often do with my clients is I'll show them, I'll take a video of them with their permission, and then I'll show them how I delete the video afterwards. And I'll take a video of them breathing. Most people, if you could pin my video, you'll be able to see more of my torso, probably like this, yeah, and a little bit larger. You're welcome to do that. It might be easier for you to see what it is that I'm doing. Most people, when they breathe, what they do is they'll go like this. If you ask them to take a deep breath, they'll go like this, which is a very short breath. They're raising their shoulders, They might be expanding their chest a little bit, but essentially they're just raising their shoulders. And they're not utilizing their diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle right over here, underneath the lungs. And the diaphragm can actually be pushed out. By pushing the diaphragm out, it allows more room for the lungs to expand. And by allowing the lungs room to expand, so you're taking a much deeper breath. So babies do this naturally. It's called belly breathing. And basically what it means is, and if you watch a side view of it, let's see, here we go. So your belly, your stomach will come out while you're breathing. So watch my hand. So my diaphragm is out, my lungs have more room to expand, and my belly being out is a sign of my diaphragm being expanded. So that's step one. Step one is knowing how to take the deep breath. Okay. Step two. Step two is bringing your attention to your breath. So you're taking a deep breath. The simple, easy way to start this, if you have no experience, is count to 3 while you're breathing in. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Or if you're a football player, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. And breathe in through your nose. You don't even have to breathe in through your nose, but I find it better. That's it. Most people, if you ask them to take a deep breath, they're like, oh, it's a very short breath. So breathe in slowly for 3 full seconds. If you can do 5 seconds, 7 seconds, great. But the simple way to begin is by doing 3 seconds. Hold it for 3 seconds. I heard somebody breathe out. Okay. Next step is you want to hold it for 3 seconds and then let go for 3 seconds. I can actually breathe 7 or 9 seconds each breath, which means that you can take 3 breaths per minute. So if you're wearing a tracker, your heart rate goes down very quickly, like that. To me, it's the most, if you can't sleep at night, this is a great exercise. It slows everything down. And what you really want to do is, in terms of the mindfulness practice aspect of it, what you're doing is you're just thinking about your breath. You're bringing your attention to your breath. I don't want to say you're thinking about your breath. You're bringing your attention to your breath. That's what you're doing. What happens, though, when you bring your attention to your breath? You can all guess. Something else comes to mind. Yeah, you might have a somatic reaction like that, where you're yawning, okay? And that's fine. But usually something will happen. What will that be? A strange thought will come to mind. What you have to do, okay? So in mindfulness, we try to be non-judgmental. And rather than saying, oh, I'm not very good at this, I'm not a very good breather, I can't do this, and instead of like being judgmental and self-critical, you just accept the thought, say, oh, okay, so I'm thinking about dinner. And then you can just let go of that thought. You can watch it float away even. You can visualize it, watch it float away, and just come back to your breath. By the way, those of you that know first aid, the best breath you can take is if your chin is even with the right parallel to the ground. If you're like this, you're going to constrict your trachea, your windpipe. So you just want to stay even. It's as simple as that. Just breathing, bring your attention to your breath. When a strange thought comes to mind, just let go of it and come back to your breath. Just come back to your breath. And you can go on YouTube and you can listen to, people narrate, and tell you what to think about and whatever it is. It's calming music, things like that. No problem, If you need a recommendation, just send me a text. I'm happy to share it with you. So just that simple act of breathing like that will slow things down, will help you flush out the hormones that are not so helpful, that you're flooded with, and it's a tremendous tool. By the way, for tefillah, for davening, how many of us tend to think about things during tefillah, during davening, that we don't really like thinking about so much because it's getting in the way of our davening? All of us, right? Well, what happens when you try to push it away? It bounces back, right? That's physics. The faster you push, the harder you push, the harder it comes back. So what's the goal? Don't push it away. Just acknowledge it. Let go of it and come back. Stop being so critical. Stop being so judgmental. Just be with yourself in that moment and just bring your attention back to your breath. If you can do that for 2 minutes, set a timer. The first time I did this, I did it for 5 minutes with a class. The next day, I suggested to those of you that know me, I wasn't very shy in college. I suggested to the professor that he start off that way again the next morning. And he goes, and then he took a vote. Everybody wanted to do it. We did 17 minutes. It was awesome. So I don't do this all the time, but when I do, it's transformative. So that's a very, very simple tool that you can do that will help you with all levels, different kinds of challenges and difficulties. With that, we will end tonight. And I wish you Laila Tov. We just did a little training on mindfulness. We didn't do the actual exercise so much, but you're always welcome to do that on your own. And I thank you so much for joining us. I don't know who you are, David buys houses, but I thank you for joining us. I can't hear you. Should I unmute you? Can I unmute you? Let's see. I can't because you muted yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah. What's your name?
Aviva.
Aviva. And is that your daughter?
I'm fostering her. This is Josephina.
Josephina. Well, thank you so much for that. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi. What you taught us today, my husband always teaches me how to breathe like that.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you so much. He does also yoga, meditation. Thank you. It was a wonderful shiur. God bless you.
Oh, thank you, Aviva. I really appreciate it. I assume you're in touch with Natalie?
Yes,
Okay.
she's the one. Because of Natalie, I'm fostering this girl. Natalie does a lot of chesed. She helps a lot of children to go to good homes.
Right. Yeah,
Yes, I go to her synagogue, Rabbi Bijan's synagogue.
Okay. All right.
Yes, thank you, Rabbi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
Okay, everybody.